The devastating earthquake that struck Tangshan in 1976 killed almost 700,000 people. But the deadliest part of this horrific disaster wasn't the earthquake itself. It was the structures that were supposed to survive it. So, how did ancient builders manage to cut, craft, and construct massive structures that still stand in some of the most earthquake-prone regions on Earth? The walls at Sacsayhuamán have endured hundreds of earthquakes, including the 1950 Cusco earthquake that damaged many Spanish colonial buildings throughout the city. But these giant interlocking stone walls remain standing, despite being created centuries earlier without steel or concrete. How did ancient builders learn to build walls that could survive earthquakes? Did they discover engineering principles far ahead of their time? Or were they building on forgotten knowledge? The megalithic wall of Easter Island, the advanced anti-seismic technology, is not confined to just Peru. The megalithic wall at Vinapu on Easter Island looks strangely out of place, as though it belongs to a totally different civilization. Most people come here to see moai. The humongous stone heads, without a doubt, deserve the attention. But stretching behind these fallen moai is a stone wall, unlike any other found in Polynesia. The structure is built from enormous basalt blocks, weighing several tons each. Every stone was shaped with exceptional care before being fitted tightly against the next without mortar. The joints are so precise that the wall appears less like stacked stone and more like a giant puzzle assembled by master craftsmen. But the real surprise comes when you begin comparing it to structures found thousands of miles away. Because this wall should not be here. Researchers and archaeologists have spent decades pointing out the same strange detail. The stonework at Vinapu bears an extraordinary resemblance to the famous megalithic walls of Peru. Well, not just a vague similarity, but the same style of construction seen at sites such as Sacsayhuamán and Ollantaytambo. The stones are polygonal rather than rectangular. Their faces are slightly curved. Smaller blocks are inserted between larger ones. Some sections even contain the same unusual stone projections, often called knobs, that appear throughout the ancient Andes. That alone would be enough to spark curiosity. But the similarities continue piling up the closer the wall is examined. At Sacsayhuamán, many researchers believe the unusual arrangement of stones helps structures withstand powerful earthquakes by allowing blocks to shift slightly without collapsing. The result is a construction technique so effective that parts of those walls have survived centuries of seismic activity, including the devastating 1950 earthquake that damaged much of Cusco. Looking at Vinapu, it becomes impossible not to notice the same principles at work: massive interlocking stones, carefully distributed weight, smaller wedge-shaped blocks positioned in locations that appear deliberate rather than decorative. Then there is the question of distance. To put it simply, more than 2,000 miles of open ocean separate Easter Island from the coast of South America. But standing before Vinapu, it is easy to understand why some historians became convinced there must have been contact between the two regions. 16th century Spanish chronicles even describe a Pacific voyage by the Inca ruler Tupac Yupanqui, leading some researchers to wonder whether memories of that journey survived in both places. Whether that connection is real or not remains fiercely debated. What remains beyond debate is the wall itself. Through centuries of storms, conflict, and earthquakes, Vinapu has continued to preserve one of the most sophisticated examples of stone construction anywhere in the Pacific. So, was it a coincidence or a forgotten connection? The megalithic walls of Osirian, this ancient temple in Abydos, is a weird and wonderful structure that still baffles Egyptologists because almost everything about it feels out of place. Hidden behind the temple of Seti I, the Osirion is attributed to the same pharaoh who ruled Egypt around 1290 BC. But standing inside it feels like stepping into a completely different world. Seti's temple is covered from floor to ceiling with carvings, hieroglyphs, religious scenes, and carefully decorated stonework. Every wall tells a story. Every surface was designed to be seen. Yet only a short distance away sits the Osirion, a massive underground chamber built from gigantic blocks of granite, stripped of every feature normally associated with Egyptian temples. The first thing that hits you is the sheer scale of it. Some of the granite blocks weigh close to 100 tons. The stone itself came from Aswan, roughly 400 kilometers south of Abydos. After being quarried, these colossal blocks had to be transported across Egypt, lowered into a subterranean structure, and positioned with absolute precision. The joints are so tight that they appear fused together. And these builders didn't use mortar. For a structure connected to a pharaoh who ruled for only 11 years, that raises an interesting and intimidating question. If the builders responsible for the Osirion possessed the knowledge required to quarry, transport, and assemble stones of this size, why does that same construction method seem to disappear almost immediately afterward? Ramses II ruled for 66 years and launched some of the most ambitious building projects in Egyptian history, including Abu Simbel and major expansions at Karnak. But nothing from his reign mirrors the mind-bogglingly massive megalithic style found at the Osirion. The stones themselves add another layer to the puzzle. Unlike traditional Egyptian temples, many of the inscriptions associated with Seti appear to have been carved onto surfaces after the structure was already standing. Some even cross the joints between enormous stone blocks, an unusual choice for builders who normally planned inscriptions before construction began. These details led some of the earliest excavators, including Margaret Murray and Dord Navel, to suggest that the Osirion may have been considerably older than the temple beside it. Whether that conclusion is correct is still debated. What cannot be debated is the structure itself. And much like the earthquake-resistant walls found in Easter Island, the Osirion leaves behind the same lingering question. Was this simply an isolated achievement, or something much more older? The indestructible wall of Qorikancha, the Qorikancha, is one of the most significant and most sacred temples of the Inca Empire. But it's not the gold that makes this place remarkable. It is the stone. Long before Spanish churches rose above Cusco, Qorikancha stood at the heart of the Inca world. The name itself means the golden enclosure, and according to early accounts, sheets of hammered gold once covered its walls. There were gardens nearby that contained life-sized plants and animals fashioned from precious metals. For the conquistadors arriving in the 16th century, it must have looked like something pulled from legend. But the greatest treasure was never taken. It remained hidden beneath the gold the entire time. The walls of Qorikancha were built from carefully shaped blocks of andesite and diorite, fitted together with such astonishing precision that centuries later the joints remained difficult to see. There was no mortar or any kind of special cement used. Each block relies entirely on its shape, its weight, and its relationship to the stone surrounding it. That detail becomes far more interesting when you consider where Qorikancha was built. Cusco sits in an active seismic zone. Earthquakes have repeatedly struck the region throughout its history. There were super powerful tremors in 1650 that damaged large sections of the colonial city. Another major earthquake hit in 1749. Then in 1950, one of the strongest quakes in modern Peruvian history tore through Cusco, damaging churches, homes, and historic buildings across the city. The Spanish structures built above Qorikancha suffered extensive damage. The Inca walls beneath them largely remained where they had always been. A closer look begins to reveal why. The walls lean slightly inward rather than standing perfectly vertical. Doorways and niches follow a trapezoidal shape instead of a rectangular one. The stones themselves are locked together through irregular angles that prevent neighboring blocks from separating when the ground begins to move. Rather than resisting seismic forces, the structure was designed to absorb them. What makes Qorikancha especially fascinating is that these choices were not hidden inside the foundation. They were built directly into the architecture itself. Every angle, joint, and every shaped stone here serves a purpose. 5 centuries after the conquest of Peru, experts still stand before those walls and watch 2 different worlds sharing the same space. Colonial masonry cracked by earthquakes sits above stonework created by Inca builders, one that required repeated repairs. The other continues to hold its ground. For a civilization without steel, concrete, or modern engineering equations, that is a difficult achievement to dismiss. The earthquake-proof megalithic walls of Alatri, Italy, is located in an earthquake-prone region. And throughout its long history, entire cities have been shaken, damaged, and rebuilt. But high above the modern town of Alatri stands a stone enclosure that appears to have approached the problem very differently. The first impression is difficult to forget. Enormous limestone blocks rise one above another without mortar, without cement, and without any obvious material holding them together. Some of the stones weigh several tons. Each was shaped to fit tightly against its neighbors, creating walls so precise that the joints nearly disappear into the rock itself. The effect is less like traditional masonry and more like a mountain carefully assembled by human hands. What makes Alatri unique is that it does not stand alone. Similar polygonal walls appear across Italy, stretching through Lazio, Abruzzo, Campania, Tuscany, and Molise. There are many examples that survive in ancient fortifications, terraces, aqueducts, and foundations. But a curious pattern emerges the moment their distribution is mapped. The highest concentration appears in the very region that gave rise to Rome. But not in Rome itself. For decades, scholars attributed these structures to Roman builders. At first, that sounds perfectly reasonable. The Romans were among the greatest engineers of the ancient world. Roads, bridges, aqueducts, and amphitheaters, their achievements are everywhere. But when archaeologists examine Roman construction, a different architectural language appears: rectangular blocks. Arches, concrete, symmetry. Alatri speaks another language. The stones are irregular. The entrances often use enormous triangular openings rather than Roman arches. The blocks lock together through dozens of angles, creating walls that seem designed to absorb movement rather than resist it. When earthquakes strike, rigid structures tend to crack. These walls behave differently. Their massive interlocking stones distribute stress throughout the structure, reducing the risk of catastrophic failure. That feature has led some researchers to compare them with earthquake-resistant masonry found in Peru. Separated by an ocean and built by entirely different cultures, both traditions relied on giant polygonal stones, fitted together with extraordinary precision. Both created structures capable of surviving centuries of seismic activity. And both continue to raise questions about where such knowledge originated. Perhaps the Romans inherited the technique and later abandoned it. Perhaps the walls belong to an earlier tradition already standing when Roman builders arrived. Either explanation faces challenges. What remains standing today is the evidence itself. The mysterious stone walls of Sacsayhuamán. If Qorikancha demonstrates how the Incas mastered earthquake-resistant architecture, then Sacsayhuamán raises a far more disturbing question. How did they build it in the first place? Rising above the northern edge of Cusco is a colossal zigzag wall stretching more than 500 meters across the hillside. From a distance, the stones look impressive. Up close, they become difficult to comprehend. Some of the largest blocks are estimated to weigh between 128 and 200 tons, making them among the heaviest stones ever incorporated into a structure anywhere in the Americas. The challenge begins long before construction. These massive limestone blocks did not originate on the hill where they stand today. Many were transported from quarries located roughly 20 to 35 kilometers away across rugged Andean terrain. Steep slopes, uneven ground, and high-altitude landscapes separate the quarry sites from the finished walls. Looking at the scale of the stones, the journey alone feels like a project that should have taken decades. But somehow, the builders accomplished much more than transportation. Every block was shaped to fit against its neighbors with astonishing precision. Some contain 10 or more angles. Others twist and interlock in ways that seem almost designed to resist movement. A sheet of paper struggles to slide between many of the joints. Mortar was never required. The stones themselves perform all the work. That detail becomes particularly interesting when earthquakes enter the story. Rather than stacking uniform blocks in neat rows, the builders created a wall composed of irregular shapes locked together like pieces of an enormous puzzle. Rounded corners soften stress points. The walls lean slightly inward. Weight is distributed across countless contact surfaces. When seismic energy travels through the structure, the stones can shift slightly and then settle back into place without triggering a collapse. The result speaks for itself. Centuries of earthquakes have shaken the Cusco region, yet the Great Walls continue to stand. Many explanations have been proposed over the years. Some researchers suggested lost construction methods. Others explored odd stone working techniques. Architect John Macaulay proposed a far simpler answer: patience, experimentation, and generations of accumulated knowledge. According to his research, wooden templates may have been used to transfer the exact shape of one stone onto another, allowing masons to gradually create the extraordinary fits seen today. Whether that explanation solves the entire puzzle remains a matter of debate. Some people even say this earthquake-proof wall was built by giants. What do you say? Let us know. And be sure to like this video and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you soon.